What is up, guys? Dzeeff here, and oh my gosh, we just hit 80,000 subscribers earlier this week. I really wanted to hit that mark before YCS Niagara, and I believe that this video is actually going up on the Saturday of YCS Niagara, so if you're there, feel free to say hello to me. I don't know how you're watching this video while you're at the event, but never mind that. We hit 80,000 subscribers earlier this week, and it's very exciting. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it like I did in the past couple times we've done this type of video every 10K subs. Feels like I say sort of the same thing, but in honor of hitting another 10K milestone, we're getting even closer to 100K here. I wanted to do another Q&A video, so that's what we're going to be doing today. And also, as a side note, I think I'm also finally going to sort of retire the blue Dzeeff. I'm going to change the filter. For those of you who don't know, I'm not actually just like stupid and I don't know how to change what the color saturation is. Basically, the main light source of these videos is a window that's like right there, right behind my computer. So I use natural lighting because my other lights are like way too yellow. But anyway, during the summer, I found that the videos looked really orange, so I tried to use a filter to make it not look like that, so it sort of evened out. So in the summer, the videos looked perfectly normal, but now that it's gotten more closer to winter and we're into fall right now, the videos seem to look really blue, and a lot of people have noticed that. And I was going to change it like right after that first video that I made where I said I didn't want to change it because I was too lazy to. I know it's kind of like an ongoing meme now, but I think it's probably finally time to change the color saturation to the right way. So let's do that. Okay, that's a little better. Obviously, my room is still blue, like the walls are blue. Obviously, I'm still wearing a blue shirt, but in terms of at least myself, I don't look so sickly like I did with the blue filter. Anyway, let's just jump right into the Q&A though. So these are posted on the YouTube community page. I just said what kind of questions you guys want answered, and I sort of picked as many different ones as possible. Seems like each time I do these Q&As, I try to get as more questions than the last time. So yeah, let's just jump right in. So the first one says, who's your favorite character in Avatar: The Last Airbender? I'm also going to answer this for Legend of Korra. So in the original series, there were a lot of characters that I liked a lot, but I think that Katara was really relatable. Not so much the sister and brother rivalry between Katara and Sokka, but I think just watching her sort of journey from someone that barely knows how to waterbend to one of the best waterbenders slash healers by the end of the series, and obviously into Legend of Korra, that was really cool. In particular, waterbending is my favorite style of bending, so I really sort of identified with that character in particular, and I thought many of the things that she brought to the table in terms of the different styles, I think of like the octopus style is really cool looking, and also just how she uses water bending in so many more ways than a lot of the other water benders throughout the series really use. It seems like Katara is like always pushing the boundary. I'll also answer this for Legend of Korra though. So in Legend of Korra, I think that one of my favorite characters is actually Tenzin. I don't know, he's just like stoic, and he really, I think when I first started watching Korra, I wasn't really super happy. I mean, I kind of talked about this in the last video that I talked about Avatar, but when I first started watching Korra, I wasn't really into the sort of the spiritual aspect of bending had been lost, and it seems like that's kind of what they put Tenzin in there to do, is sort of bring that back to it. So I really enjoyed that, and also I thought that G.K. Simmons' sort of portrayal of that character was really good. Do you think Allure of Darkness is a good card? And on that note, what are some notable cards that require actual skill to play properly? So to answer the first question, yes, I do think that Allure of Darkness is a good card. It's a card that maybe isn't seen as much play anymore with Pot of Desires in the game, but I think decks like Thunder Dragons are going to play Allure of Darkness for certain. We won't know until the end of this weekend how many Thunder Dragons actually topped YCS Niagara and what their lists look like, but it seems like Allure of Darkness is really good in that deck for triggering all their effects. And also, as far as good cards that require skill to play properly, I mean, everything requires skill to play properly, but I think of old school cards like Heavy Storm and Giant Trunade, stuff like that. You could sort of, how could you bait out your opponent to get into position where those cards are the most beneficial? I think that a lot of people think of like the pro set heavy play, where when you basically you set Heavy Storm next to one of your own back row, so you have two back row, and then that baits your opponent into thinking you don't have Heavy Storm because you wouldn't set two back row and keep Heavy Storm in your hand. So then they would set like 3 or 4 back row, and then hopefully they'd like summon a monster, you'd flip like a bottomless, and then on your turn you flip up Heavy Storm for 4 or 3. That plays really cool. As far as like more modern cards, I think Pot of Duality in particular is really skill intensive. I think choosing which decks you put that card into, but also just remembering which cards you grab. And it's not only about what your hand wants, it's about realizing that your opponent sees what you grab. So then sometimes you can like bait them by grabbing like I think in Altergeist maybe you grab like one copy of Solemn Strike when you already have a copy of Solemn Strike. So if your opponent like hits one strike with a like an MST or something, then they might not think that you have that second copy of Strike to catch them off guard. So I think that Pot of Duality, as far as a modern card goes, requires a lot of skill to play properly. What's the weirdest duel you've had in the TCG? I can't think of any specific examples, but I think for me personally and for a lot of other people, some of the most memorable duels at my tournament experience, like as far as high-level tournament play goes, are the ones where both players just like brick horribly. Like I said, I can't really think of specific examples because I don't really keep track of matches that well, but just in general, when both players are playing like powerful decks or are two good rogue decks, but both players brick and can't play what their deck normally wants to do, I think those matchups are really funny. I think of sometimes when the only Altergeist card I draw is Altergeist Marionetter, and then like the only Trickstar cards my opponent has are just like one Candina that they keep bouncing back to their hand with Lycris, but they're not actually like gaining any advantage. I think that situations like that is pretty funny. Maybe not the best example because it doesn't happen too much in modern play anymore. But I think back to like Mermails when they would only have, well, maybe they just draw like Marksman but no Megalos, so they just like summon Marksman, attack a couple times, summon like Dragoons from the deck, stuff like that. Doesn't really happen too much anymore, but back in the day, at least in like 2014-ish era, a lot of times people would just brick, and even though it's the best deck, I mean, all decks can brick. Think back even at Dragon Wars, sometimes they just draw like one baby dragon, a whole bunch of hand traps, so they would just normal summon the baby dragon, kind of do some stuff with that. I think those games are particularly interesting. Do you regret going to college or feel like you wasted your time and money in college because you ended up a YuGiTuber? And if you could, would you go back in time and quit college and dedicate yourself full-time to YuGiTubing, considering you'd have more subscribers and more money and more time to hone your craft if you would have done that? Actually, I pretty much disagree with all these questions. Well, it's not, I mean, they're not disagreeing because these are questions. In terms of do I feel like I regret going to college or I felt like I wasted my money, I wholeheartedly think that I would not be where I am without college. One thing that a lot of people don't realize about why most people don't do YuGiTubing full-time is that it requires a huge time commitment to even get to the point where you can do this full-time. I think back to college and when I first started like really YuGiTubing in 2017, when I started doing daily videos. I did daily videos for 9 months, not making a lot of money, just a few $100s a month, just enough to keep me motivated. If I wasn't in college, I would have had to have like a real job on top of that, and it's a lot easier managing college and then a small part-time job and YuGiTubing versus managing a full-time job and then YuGiTubing. So I think that I would not be in the position that I am without college. Also, I graduated with an English and communication degree, and I feel that I use many things that I learned from those degrees every single day as I make videos. Who are some of your favorite YuGiTubers that aren't as popular as you or Simo? So I get this question a lot from people that are just kind of wondering if it's any small channels that I like. The three that I think of a lot of times, Swolax, gotta shout out my boy, fantastic guy, makes great thumbnails, makes great content, and just an overall really nice guy. I think of JD Gaming, who's unsurprising to any of you that have watched. He's guest uploaded, I've commented on a whole bunch of his videos. He makes really cool deck profiles that are exactly what I want to watch. They're really long, they're really in-depth. I like that kind of content. And then also recently I discovered Blade YuGiOh, who I think John Moore even gave a shout out to, but that channel is really good. Maybe could use a little bit more editing, but he's still a very small channel, but I highly recommend all three of those channels. They're relatively small, relatively unknown, and they have my full support as far as the content that I've seen out of all three of them. How much do you consider non-Yu-Gi-Oh players when making your videos? Well, I don't know exactly what you're meaning by this. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I don't know if you're also considering players that haven't played the game in like 10 years, because I consider them as well, and I also consider Duel Links players. I try to consider as many people as possible when I'm making videos, especially videos that I know people are going to watch. In particular, stuff like the Why Nobody Plays or the Commenters Don't Understand series. Those videos, I have a pretty good idea that they're going to get a lot of views just in general. So when I make those videos, I do try to outline the reason that those cards aren't good with as many concrete examples as possible. If you go back to that, I mean, I know we've sort of made fun of many of the comments in the Why Nobody Plays Exodia and the Why Nobody Plays Egyptian God Cards videos, but if you go back to those, I try to really use as many real-life examples that are applicable to those cards as possible, especially in the case of the Egyptian God Card video, where I really spend most of the video, I mean, It's funny because someone commented on that and said, wow, you must have really not talked about the rulings on those cards because you keep getting so many comments about it. In fact, it's quite the opposite. I spent almost all that video just talking about why the cards don't work the way that people used to think that they worked. I talked like for several minutes about what targeting means, and I talked about in terms of raw what cost means versus effect, why that life point thing is really rough, and why you can't just play any, or can't just pay any amount. So I did spend a lot of time talking about that. Obviously, it didn't quite work for every single viewer, but I think in general, I really do try to think of all people when I'm making these videos, especially the ones that I know are going to get watched by all types of watchers. If you had the chance to completely rewrite one game rule in the TCG, what would it be? Well, I think the answer is pretty straightforward. I think it's one that a lot of people would give. I think the entire idea of missing timing is completely ridiculous. Not to mention that for the most part on modern cards, they don't really even use the when you can thing. Obviously, they have printed a couple cards recently. I think the Thunder Dragon Titan also has a when you can effect as far as the triggering for destruction, but in general, they haven't printed so many of those when you can effects. Most of them are if you can, or most of them are just when and then not you can. So there's so many specific things that have to go wrong or right depending on how you see it for a effect to actually be able to miss timing, like Dupe Frog and like the Naturia Cliff card and like the Gusto monsters. There's so many things that specifically have to be written on the card for it to miss timing. It just seems like a really weird ruling to me, and I think in general the game would be a lot simpler if they just abolished it. I think it's like missing the timing, damage step, and then spell speeds that confuse the most amount of people in terms of specific rulings. So I think that if we just got rid of cards missing the timing, obviously it would immediately buff many cards like Light Pulsar Dragon, like Dupe Frog, but I think that's okay in the grand scheme of things as long as they manage to make sure there's no like crazy FTKs that can happen, because Light Pulsar plus Red MD technically does create an FTK if you have Cannon Soldier, if you make Light Pulsar Dragon not miss timing, so cards like that would have to be fixed. But I just think it's a really weird thing. I think in almost all the cases of cards that have missing the timing on them, I think one way you could just fix them is making whatever effect used to miss timing just a hard once per turn effect so that no loops can happen. I think that'd be perfectly acceptable. Why do you seem to read every comment that ever existed on your channel? Well, the reason being, and I mention this sometimes during live streams, and some people are like, how do you pull up these comments for like the commenters don't understand videos? Like, how do you even see them on these older videos? The reason being, and a lot of people don't know this if you don't make videos, on the YouTube app, the Creator Studio app on your phone as a creator, when you look through the comments, it doesn't show you what's just on the recent videos. It just shows all the comments that are being commented on all your videos in chronological order. So if someone like today went and commented on a video from 5 years ago, that would still pop up on my feed at the very top if it was recently commented. So when you think of why I'm seeing all these older comments and why I see every comment, it's because I do take the time throughout the day, a lot of times throughout the day actually, to make sure I'm reading all the comments, specifically because I just want to know what people think about the videos, whether it's old or new, so I can learn to make better videos in the future. What are some of your favorite artworks of cards in the game? Well, this is kind of random, but I think I really do enjoy the artworks of field spells where they show a whole bunch of different older monsters. I think the one that comes to mind is Lost World for dinosaurs. That is like so many old school dinosaurs on that card artwork. It's just insane how many cards they fit in that artwork. I really like cards like that. It's not really that I like them because they're super competitive. I mean, Lost World is okay, but it's not like fantastic. But I think when Konami on newer cards puts a whole bunch of older cards on those artworks is really cool. What aspects do you think make Yu-Gi-Oh more or less enjoyable compared to other card games? Well, for the more enjoyable part, I'll answer the same two things that many other people will probably answer if you ask them this question. First off, I really like that there's no land system or mana or energy or anything like that. I like that if I build my deck correctly, I can always play all the cards in my hand. I think that's a really cool aspect. I don't really play a lot of Magic, but I play Hearthstone as long as you just draw those unplayable hands with all high mana costs and you just feel like you couldn't do anything. And then I also really enjoy, for the second thing, I like that there's no set rotation. I think that's one of the biggest reasons people play Yu-Gi-Oh! You can, even though the rules change over the years, if you came back with your deck from 2008, many of those cards, while not good, would still be playable. And I know to some people, good and playable are like the same thing, but they're really not, because I think of like, I have 2 Pokemon decks back from when I played Pokemon in 2015-ish. I would love to go to like a Pokemon tournament just for fun and play those decks, but I literally can't because all the cards are rotated out, or most of the cards have been rotated out. Where in the case of Yu-Gi-Oh, if you want to play your older deck, even if you know it's not very good, you can at least go to an event, change it a little bit for the Forbidden Limited list, and then just play that old strategy. Obviously, that gets a little more complicated with links, but I think still, even with link summoning in general, you can play many of your older cards, which in other card games doesn't really happen. And the last question, he says, my question is, what's one kind of video you've considered doing but eventually killed? Any plans for? There's lots of videos. I think that the types of videos that get axed the most on the cutting room or the editing room are the why nobody plays videos. I spend a lot of time really trying to figure out which cards will fit that series the best, because it has to be a very specific type of card. It has to be a card that casual players know of, so that, I mean, that's like the majority of those views are going to be from casual players that see it and are like angry about it, and that's totally fine. So it has to be sort of iconic. It's a card that a lot of people think about playing. It has to be a card that's not completely terrible, because that's no fun to analyze, but not quite good enough to actually be played. It has to be a card that has pretty much never seen competitive play in the last like 10 to 15 years. I kind of went off of that for like the Dark Bribe and Magic Cylinder video, because those cards actually did see play in old school Yu-Gi-Oh! But I think as long as the card hasn't seen a ton of mainstream success in the past 10 years, it's perfectly fine for that series. I think just in general, besides that, a lot of times I'll like write like a small sort of script or talking points for video, and then I'll sit down and start recording it, and after like 2 minutes I'm just like, this isn't interesting, no one's gonna care to watch this, and I cut a lot of those videos. I can't really think of any off the top of my head. I guess I had a video on like steel swarms that I wanted to do, just kind of talking about them, but it just felt like many of the things that I was saying I had already said. It's a cool archetype and I kind of want to talk about it, but it's just like I have to come up with like new and interesting ways. I know a lot of people just think my videos are just saying that cards are bad if they don't gain card advantage or if they're trap cards, but there's actually a lot more effort that goes into it than that. So I really, when I make videos, I want to tackle new ideas and new sort of analytical points to talk about specific cards. So I'm not just repeating myself over and over and over again, although I get to some people, especially the people that don't like my channel, they do think I'm just repeating things. In the case of Steel Swarms, many of the things that I would say about the deck I've already said in other videos, just in general, so I don't know, maybe I'll come back to that someday. But just a lot of times I'll make a video, and after like 2 minutes of recording I'll just say, this isn't that good. Anyway though, that is the last question, so hopefully you guys enjoyed this 80,000 Q&A video. We're not quite at the point where I want to say road to 100k. I think when we hit the 90k, which should be in about a month and a half or 2 months here, that's when we'll really start saying road to 100k, and that'll be very exciting. Once again, thank you guys so much for subscribing. I know I've been posting lots of different types of content. We got occasionally Duel Links videos, and even less occasionally we got pack opening videos, but I still do like to stick to the discussion videos as much as possible. Thank you guys so much for watching and subscribing. I will see you later. If you were at YCS Niagara, feel free to come up and say hello. I will see you guys later though. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.